Hello there, YouTubers. Destiny Marchand here. It has come to my attention that while there is a profusion of people taking issue with Christianity, for reasons that should be clear to most anyone outside the Muslim world, there is a distinct lack of criticism of Islam. Given the events in France the morning of January 7, 2015, it would seem that a critique of religion, and Islam in particular, is long overdue. Here I thought the Christians were bad when they bitch about a lack of their religion as part of the science curriculum. A small number of gunmen stormed a satirical weekly in Paris, killing 12 people, including the editor, several of the staff, and 2 policemen. They were armed with AK-47 assault rifles, and one witness reported seeing a rocket launcher. What crime were they avenging? The publication of a comic on the front page featuring 2 men in the midst of a sloppy kiss, one bearing the dress of a Muslim, and the other a black t-shirt with the newspaper's name on it. My French is non-existent, so I can't tell you any more about it. The word in the media indicates that this was supposed to be a depiction of their particular huckster. In some ways, I can see why they might be offended. They have a strict ban on imagery of Muhammad or Allah as they adhere to, religiously. On the flip side, the rights of the people to speak are not bound by the feelings of another creature. Comedy isn't comedy unless someone's getting pissed off. Murdering the comedians only serves to bottle up the feelings of society. As anyone that's ever been through a psych class will tell you, that's never a good thing. All those rebellions you people had to deal with over the last 1,300 years or so? Yeah, those. In the histories? I think I know why that happened. Fundamentalism is dangerous. It doesn't matter who it is or what they believe. This was only a taste. We got an early one from the same paper in 2011 when the Muslims firebombed it in response to a different cartoon they published. The Frontline's history of that paper dates to 2006, when they reprinted the Dutch cartoons that Islam threw a fit about. I'm going to put this in simple terms for you. I have less than 0 fucks to give for you or your feelings, what I choose to do with my life, including what I think or feel, the way I express those, or your opinion on the way I'm fucking dressed. In fact, I'm dressed this way just for the occasion. And if you don't like it, you can suck my tail. No, really. Here you go. Suck it. Oh, you don't want to? No bitching. Those who know me will recall that I have an abiding distaste for religion, and this is a major lack for a belief system that encompasses more than 1 billion people spread out across the planet, carrying on their own brand of justice in places where that sort of activity is illegal. They demand respect for their beliefs well and above what they grant to others. And for some reason, I cannot fathom receive it much more often than not. There's a limit, people, and we're way beyond that point now. As most of the world will remember, on September 11, 2001, 4 airliners were hijacked by people of Muslim origin, and were thereafter destroyed when 2 of those planes were flown into a pair of very tall buildings in New York City, with the third hitting a government building in Washington, D.C. The passengers of the 4th aircraft appear to have attempted to gain control and succeeded in foiling the intent of the hijackers in destroying another structure, whichever one that may have been. That plane was grounded violently in a field in western Pennsylvania, and we will never know what target it was assigned. It is thought that it was intended for either the White House or the Capitol building in D.C., but that is only conjecture. I can, however, say with some degree of certainty that the target was not a farmer's field. Before you conspirators start, we'll get to you later. This isn't about you or your supposed evidence. Occam's razor dealt with you years ago, and now is not the time to rehash decrepit bullshit and settle old scores. Kage has been researching your roasting for years and promised he'll deal with your crap in due course. Expect it to be a long one, as he's got a big hard drive dedicated to that project. More than likely, he'll have to take over crippling conspiracies for a few months just to scratch the surface. Since then, the entire planet has been terrified beyond words that Muslims will do the same thing to them, only worse. To that I say, wake the fuck up! They've got you people cowering in corners. Now that they've done something big and flashy to get your attention, they flaunt the criminal justice system in the UK, claiming freedom of religion. They drop into social media and tell us that if we respect their religion, then they'll stop killing people. They demand that we teach their religion in Western schools and neighborhoods, when the education system at large feels justified in telling Christians to go fuck themselves. Before we begin the slaughter, I want to touch briefly on something I know will enrage a lot of you. Atheism. There is a level of disagreement as to what it even is, and I'm going to share with you what my view is on it, so we have a definition going forward. I've heard a number of different definitions, and they vary depending on who I'm talking to. To some particularly the more hard-headed Christians and Muslims, atheism is the claim that there is no God. Believe what you will, I suppose. But I can't make a positive claim of that nature, and neither can any one of my friends here on the channel. We can't prove that gods do not exist any more than we can definitively claim that they can't. We lack the evidence necessary to support that conclusion, and therefore cannot accept arguments that don't come with verifiable evidence that can be empirically tested. Not one of those holy books in circulation today have predictive power, and the claims they do make are so vague that they are essentially meaningless. All we get are ad hoc rationalizations of things that have already happened, and those things are universally unverifiable. The other thing they all have in common is the insistence that they are the word of whatever deity is supposed to be worshipped. But when one asks for evidence that the claim is true, we are referred forthwith to the book in which the claim is made, and often to the same location. That's called circular reasoning, and arguments that exempt the speaker because of what it's supposed to be is special pleading. As atheists, we take some measure of security in being able to think critically, and that entails not making exceptions to the rules. No, not even for stupid people, or self-affirming sadists, especially not for them. If I made the claim that I'm your God, you'd laugh at me in the same way you would a gerbil that thinks it's human. Anyone can make a claim. It is for us, as human beings, to make value judgments based on the claimant and his evidence. If a claimant today stated that God spoke to him, we'd put him away. Yet humans murder their own based on the word of just such people from antiquity. People hate one another on as little foundation as that, and sometimes even less. I don't believe in any God, because I have no evidence for such a creature, and a pile of evidence against, as you will see in a moment. I don't hate your God or any God. I can't hate something for which there is no credible evidence of existence. I can, and do, actively despise religion for what it does to otherwise good people. For the bigotry it espouses, and for the hurts it has inflicted on science, technology, and above all else, its cost in human misery made by humans, its only purpose is as a weapon to organize humans in an effort to destroy others of their own species. Untold atrocities have been committed by masses of people fervently wishing for an eternal reward after they end their time here. My mother named me Destiny Jezebel, because I was her one and only opportunity to have children, and I had the poor grace to be female. Destiny because I was the end of her dream, and Jezebel because her image of a fine, upstanding Christian soldier for a son was shattered at the moment of conception. Well, you can imagine what my childhood was like. She died a few years ago, cold and alone. She wanted me to marry a man thrice my age, bought and paid for at 16. I refused, and nothing she could do would force me to yield. If her God does exist, I hope he found her a special corner of some place wretched with some lovely torture for what she did to me and all the people around me. Maybe it put her in front of a TV, and the only thing she could watch was me having a good life, despite her best efforts. But that's a little cold of me. Most likely, when she breathed her last, she simply stopped, and that was the end of it. Fuck it. The world is a quieter place. In the beginning, first up, let's make something crystal clear here. I have a number of sources at my disposal, including the holy books of each major deist religion. That includes the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran. I can read at least as well as Kage and Ren, and better than Thailand and Miria. In comparing all three, I can say one thing with absolute certainty. All three religions were following the same fucking God. That's right. Ren and Kage refer to all three religions as Abrahamics, and I have to agree. All three worship the same sadistic, egomaniacal tyrant. Regardless of what you want to call it, El, Allah, Yahweh, or any of the handful of others, you all derive your claims from the covenant that Abraham's house God made with them in the Genesis account. As each religion broke off, they've been fighting one another over the only place in Middle East where there's no fucking oil. Couldn't you have picked a spot where there's at least some natural resources? It's a patch of rock in the middle of a desert that, without your purportedly stink-free shit, no one would care about. Yet holy wars have been fought over this one spot for more than a millennium. To me, this smacks of a lack of priorities and a severe case of overpopulation. The city of Jerusalem has been the site of more bloodshed over the last 1,000 years than the First World War. Seriously? Do people's lives really mean so little? Lest the rest of you think I've started it on Muslims. I haven't. I'm talking to every one of you idiots that follow that crazed death fanatic you call a deity. You are all equally guilty in this, and you need to see what worshipping your magic sky fairy has done to civilization. Millions of people are dead just to fulfill what you were told were the wishes of a creature that you can't even define on any level, and has provided exactly no evidence of its existence, past, present, or future. The stories from each of the three books in question are known to be false. There is no evidence of a global flood, and certainly no records. There is evidence that runs contrary to the story of Adam and Eve, as the rise of diversity that is present in humanity as a whole cannot be explained with a single pair of individuals. Never mind a bottleneck to 8 related individuals of advanced age aboard the Ark in the deluge. That never happened. If you want evidence, look to the inbred family lines that exist today. More than 5 generations of humans continually interbreeding leads to some nasty genetic errors. The net result is that people are born that cannot have offspring, or what children they do have are badly malformed. Lethal genetic aberrations are order of the day. Hemophilia, for example. The royal lanes of Europe had a number of personages with this particular issue, and some of them were already sickly. The smallest nick or scrape could result in death. Those genes are still around today, albeit scattered to the 4 winds. The fastest way to prove that someone in your ancestry was a royal would be not stop bleeding once you started. Today we have clotting factors that can provide temporary relief, but it's a problem all way round. No, scratch that. It's a major pain in the ass. That's not all by any stretch. There is also no evidence of a vast number of Jews leaving Egypt abruptly, nor an army being lost concurrent with such an event. If they lost a few people, it would have been noted, and work would have gone on, business as usual. Had they lost that many people, an army, and a pharaoh, it would have been front-page news everywhere. Any one of those things set off a flurry of activity that is easily found in the documentation of the time. All 3 together would have spelled disaster. Of those 3 events, there is no evidence of occurrence, and a lot that speaks to the contrary. On that alone, it's my contention that we can dispose of that part of the story. The 3 books share a few other similarities as well. They all claim that the earth and universe at large was created in 6 days, and depending on who you talk to, the date of creation is anywhere between 4 and 8,000 years ago. Some Christian scholars will claim numbers as far back as 10,000 years, while a word game some Muslims play with a passage in the Quran goes back 300,000 for the creation event alone. Never mind that in a later part of the same book, the claim is much closer to the 6,000 years claimed by Christians, plus or minus the history from the Jewish text from which their religion is based. So that would then be 12,000 years or so, with the first half of that being taken up by the build-up to the creation of humanity. Horseshit, all of it. The correct date from the tools we have available is some 4.5 billion years ago for the formation of the Earth, and the beginning of the universe roughly 9 billion years earlier. For evidence, I present the city of Jericho, as named in the books, which can trace its history back a bit more than 10,000 years. For those of you not paying attention, that's older than all but the most distant of the Islamic numbers, and that a word game directly contradicted by a later part of the text. The New Testament does this too, being the story of a man that no one can find anywhere in the historical record except for the New Testament and the Quran. Even his birthplace wouldn't be settled until sometime during the 2nd century of the Common Era, and Islam wouldn't until after 600 CE. This is roughly 3 centuries after Constantine converted Rome to Christianity, and Christians could live and worship in the open. Muhammad shared space and time with the other Abrahamic sects, and it would have been simplicity itself to retell those stories in his own words. Which, based on the comparison of 3 books in question, is exactly what he did. There is a large chance this was done intentionally, as it is easier to accept a pile of rotted fecal matter as if it looks similar to your own. A significant portion of the Quran is dedicated to the retelling of the Jesus myth, although with a different name and some of the particulars altered to taste. From there, the recitation gets a lot more warlike, as Muhammad's original teachings are rejected outright by the vast majority of Jews and Christians. I've been told that it was a source of some confusion for the fledgling Islam, as they were all children of the book, and as such should have, in the face of a new prophet, immediately submitted. I admit, it was a good plan, with just one minor drawback. Muhammad expected far too much all at once from a society that had already had issues with spurious claims of prophecy. Had he been born 600 years earlier, he might have stood a chance. But not then. Christianity had already dealt with its own problems, and Judaism wasn't having any of it from either. Like all the best hucksters and charlatans, he did succeed in gaining adherents. First in small numbers, and then more and more as time went on. By 622, there was an Islamic state, created with the signing of the Constitution of Medina. Between 624 and 631 CE, the Muslims cut a bloody swath across the Middle East, ending in the Battle of Tabuk. His new nation secure, Muhammad made a final pilgrimage to Mecca and died a year later. After that point, there was a bit of a disagreement over who was his successor, as Muhammad had not been bothered to name one. The Sunni sect, which makes up the vast majority of Muslims today, elected a caliph and moved on from there. Those who would become today's Shias decided that Muhammad's family should continue to rule and went to do something else. Before year's end, they were once again roaming the countryside, slaughtering everyone that wasn't adherent or willing to become one at sword point. Within a century, Islam could stretch from Spain to the west to the Indus River in the east, along with all the southern Mediterranean and most of northern Africa. Not to say it was all bad, however. The Muslims of that time went to some great pains to secure and preserve knowledge, as well as make advancements in some being akin to science and various technological leaps, and were preserved in the west prior to being beaten back by a combination of the Roman legions, Byzantines, and their own infighting. Not that the Christians have been particularly idle either. They were busy converting people throughout Europe using the same methods as the Muslims were. Don't think I've forgotten about you over there. Well, I've been talking about the history of Islam. Your turn's coming. And don't think I'll be even remotely polite. By the end of the 11th century, the Crusades were in full swing, and that's when the really nasty crap starts flying. By that time, most of the Jews were in hiding and hoping the persecution from both of the younger religions was going to end eventually. It didn't, until after another asshole started a world war and tried to eliminate them all. He failed, and the aftermath started the crap all over again. We'll get to that in another video. This first set of videos is about the youngest of the Abrahamics. And when we're done with them, the rest of you morons can have my complete and undivided fucking attention. To the Jews, don't start partying because I said that you had legitimate issues. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. You lot have your own special skeletons in that huge closet of yours, and I will be dragging them out. I'm getting them out of the way first so you can't accuse me of picking on you in an undue manner. The Christians won't like me either, and the Muslims even less. To every theist everywhere, if you take issue with my portrayal of your particular religion, then you have every right to set me straight. I will be accepting arguments in the comments below, and as is the policy of this channel, we will not be censoring discussion. Hate speech will not be tolerated, and threats will be reported. Be calm, take your time, and provide at least an attempt at rational argument. In the next segment, we'll get into the life of Muhammad and the issues that are specific to him. After that, we'll get into the rise and fall of intellectual Islam before I dig into the rest of the history and the 11 major sects of Islam. From there, I'm thinking your attitude of intolerance, including your warrior tradition and attitudes towards women and other atrocities. If I can find a reasonable source, I'll do a special video on Sharia law. If I haven't mentioned your particular brand of Sky Fairy simpering yet, chances are you're on the list for later, after I dealt with this lot. If you've watched this far, feel free to write up or down and leave your comments in the box below. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe. If you want to keep an eye on the evil atheist infidels mocking the stupid, do the same thing. We subscribe to several channels we're keeping an eye on for egregious stupidity, so it stands to reason that some of you might want to do the same. If you're really enjoying the content, as well as the changes we're making to the channel, then drop by the social media links and consider becoming a patron on the Patreon link. The changes have costs in terms of time and money, and every little bit helps. If you don't feel like making a continuing contribution, a one-shot option can be found in the bar to the right, or on the channel page in the same place. We hate to play the beggar, but at this point, we either do it or we have to dial it back a bit. We like the changes as a group, and we really like to keep them. From all of us to all of you, thank you and have a day, be it good, bad, ugly, or somewhere in between.